I think it's fair to say that when it comes to the delicate relationship between player and video game, that the horror genre really does like to take a big old steamer all over the whole affair, and does so with such gusto that you kind of end up thanking the cheeky little devil. Now, to give more context to that strange and rather stinky image, when it comes to air quotes regular video game experiences, the player is usually guided in some form or another along the path of least resistance in order to see things through to the end, as after all, the devs behind the title really do want you to complete their work and have a good time doing so. Therefore, and bear in mind this isn't always the case, player deaths are usually used fairly sparingly, as hard resets like this act as a hefty deterrent to those actually holding the controller. But horror games, however, well, they just can't wait to kill you, and some of these games are so hopped up on their own hype that they will absolutely burst a player within the opening moments of the game. Calm down, lads, I barely even registered what's going on. Well, let's take a look at them. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 8 horror video games that kill you in the first 10 seconds. Number 8. Resident Evil 3 Remake. Now, one of the biggest selling points of the adrenaline-soaked Resident Evil 3 Remake experience was the ever-present threat of the one and only Nemesis, a hulking mass of muscle and hatred that might look at first like he's been fished from a skip with that trash bag aesthetic, but will look to bin you off over and over again as it morphs into different forms. And trust me, Nemesis wastes absolutely zero time getting down to business in this remake. Now, while fans of the original experience had a pretty hairy first 10 seconds as Jill was cornered by zombies that could and would munch her like a much-mentioned Jill sandwich, the remake dials things up so hard that the knob comes off in its hand because Nemesis breaks into Jill's flat and proceeds to tear her apart like wet bloody bread. Now, for reference, the bread is wet because you've just pissed yourself. And also, I'm not a duck. While you desperately try to survive against Nemesis's onslaught, you'll guide Jill through the ruins of her home to the top of the building and then back down into the streets below, all before the game has even properly introduced itself, and you can die many times along the way. So have fun. Number 7. Dark Souls 2. Now, while it would be very easy for me to place any From Software title into this entry, as pretty much every trolling title created by these devious devs is a masterclass in murdering the player as soon as they've begun, today we're going to look at Dark Souls 2 and its opening section, which provides so many ways to die that it's almost comical. Now, to be fair, the game does warn you that death is quite literally all you'll be seeing for a fair old while, what with those old crones having a giggle at your situation, but seriously, the game barely waits until you've booted up before it starts laying its own into your face. In the starting area alone, you can head to the left and be smashed into the ground by an ogre, or try your luck against one of them down by the coffin lake, or you can end up jumping off a cliff to your doom thanks to other players' messages dotting around Majula. But hands down, the funniest and most incredulous death that you can experience is at the hands of the enslaved pigs. This is meant to be one of the few safe areas in the game, but here we are getting bashed around by some tiny pigs that are so hard to hit, and they have so much bloody health. To die to the pigs is shameful, hilarious, and quite possibly just something that everybody has to go through at least once. Number 6. Dead Space 2. Whereas many horror titles might open with the player being introduced to the monsters within the area at a semi-safe distance, or giving them easy fodder to avoid or chew through, Dead Space 2 not only brings its more horrifying creatures to the forefront, but then completely strips you of any means to defend yourself whatsoever. And by that, I mean that you have to flee from a horde of necromorphs while fighting against the constraints of a bloody straitjacket. It's a desperate flight as the necromorphs of all shapes and sizes flood the area, and while it's laid out in a rather linear route, things are made much more challenging should you not be prepared to hammer the ever-loving piss out of a QTE at the end of the section, which is basically just a fear-soaked cherry on a cake made of utter dread. Tastes horrible. Number 5. Doom 2016 on Nightmare difficulty. So as we all know, Doom and its subsequent arcade glory kill of a sequel, Doom Eternal, are some of the purest power fantasy gaming moments that we mere mortals can experience. As the Doom guy, we can rip, tear, and absolutely mulch the forces of hell in brutal and unforgiving ways, often embarrassing our foes so much in the process that they are red-faced in 2 senses, one from embarrassment and the other from squishing their skull like an overripe grape. Still, the franchise does its best to stop the rampaging wall of fury coming its way, and even in the opening sections of the phenomenal 2016 reboot, you're met with resistance in the form of some possessed right out of the gate. Now, normally you just cleave through these fellows like they were paper, but on Nightmare difficulty, even this fodder can feed you your own spine in seconds. Seriously, a couple of these with some well-timed hits will down you so quickly that Doom Guy might want to stay in that sealed coffin a little longer just to live down the shame. The devs are not kidding around with this this mode, and you will die so many times in the opening 10 seconds or so that if you're not careful, Nightmare truly will haunt your dreams forevermore. Number 4. Zombie U. Alright, goof, now what's all this about then? That, my friends, was just a small example of how bloody British Zombie U is from top to taint. A fact that is hammered home pretty quickly when you get to experience what real life in London is like in the opening moments, aka it sees you fending off zombies in a filthy underground tube station with a cricket bat. Oh, and did we mention that you can also get torn apart quicker than public funding budgets in this game? Oh, what joy. With the events opening on your character being faced with a horde of zombies and with nothing to defend yourself with other than a smarmy wit that all Brits are born with, things escalate pretty quickly as you're forced to flee into the underground. Worse still, if you do happen to make a wrong turn or spend too much time pondering if you could grab a Twix from a nearby vending machine, you'll end up getting mobbed by the horde and getting killed in quick fashion. Thankfully though, the game relents a ton after this by, actually equipping you with the means to smash those stiff upper lips right back to hell. Number 3. XCOM UFO Defense. Whereas some of the games on this list might think that they're doing something fresh and unique by killing the player in a matter of seconds, the XCOM franchise has been giving the player the finger and then burying said finger into their eyes moments after for decades now. And while I'd love to harp on about the more recent titles, it's truly the 1994 original that earns the quick kill crown. You see, dear friends, it's not just very possible and very, very likely that you'll die within seconds of starting your first mission in this game, but you can actually doom yourself entirely depending on where you place your base at the beginning of the game. As if you're unable to stop UFOs with your intercepting aircraft thanks to being too far away, or posit yourself in an area with low funding, you'll be left adrift as the rest of the world burns down around you. Still, back to the action, and oh look, I've been murdered right away by an advanced alien race firing off screen at my guile-haired troopers who've just marched to their doom. Thanks to the random layout of the levels and the fact that the fog of war is so dense that you might worry that your squad needs a trip to Specsavers, you're going to be obliterated without knowing what shot you or where it came from. Kiss the pavement, my friend. We all had to go through this. Number 2. Darkest Dungeon. Darkest Dungeon is not for the faint of heart. That is for damn sure. Seriously, if you've even a murmur in the old ticker, then I'd give this game a pass, because the stress and strain this title puts on you is like none other. Now, you think in a tutorial section that a game would take it a bit easier on you, right? Well, in Darkest Dungeon's case, that is a most grievous assumption, as while these sections are easy compared to the rest of the brutal game, this experience does not begin with you hopping and chopping your way through things with ease. Thanks to the pseudo-randomized nature of the enemies you'll face here, and the good old god of RNG always threatening to roll permanent ones for you behind the scenes, it's very possible to get absolutely battered in the first minute of gameplay. Hell, if you're an absolute fool and travel without torchlight, there's a 1% chance the game will randomly spawn a shambler. The nightmare demon that can party wipe you in a single move? Yeah, that. Thankfully, the game at least lets you fail forward by auto-completing the tutorial quest and giving you some much-needed gold, but it's not a great look to start a new quest with the game's shoe print all over your mug. And number 1, Uninvited. Now, for those of you who might remember a gaming landscape before the microtransaction-addled loot box fest rot set in, you might know of a little curious horror title called Uninvited, which dropped in 1986 for the Macintosh. Its point-and-click style mixed with a hefty dose of horror and humor made it an underslung gem on the system, and it's still a great laugh if you can get your hands on it today. Well, it's a laugh assuming you don't get killed within the first 10 seconds, that is, which is very likely to happen to any newcomers to the title or the genre at large. You begin your adventure with a quite literal bang as you awake to find that your car has crashed and that your younger brother is now missing. However, before you can even begin to question what caused the crash or what terrors might lay in wait, you need to get out of the car as quickly as possible. And I mean that quite literally, as if you don't figure out the controls or how to interact with the game world in time, your car will explode and will shred you to pieces. Uninvited really does live up to its namesake here, as with this opening sequence, it's like the game doesn't want you to play it at all. And there we go, my friends. Those were 8 horror video games that kill you in the first 10 seconds. I hope that you enjoyed that. And if I only had 10 seconds to speak to you right now, I'd say big up yourself, my friend, because you deserve love and respect, all of the best things in life, because you are a massive ledge, all right? And do not let anything or anyone else tell you otherwise. I want you to go out there and absolutely smash it. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that. And I'll speak to you soon. Bye.